Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into something most people don't really understand: management.
Hmm.
We'll be looking closely at Henry Mintzberg's book, Simply Managing.
Okay.
And this deep dive is going to help us cut through all the talk about leadership to get to what really makes managers effective.
What's really interesting is that the core of managing hasn't really changed that much.
Right.
It's more that the amount of information and the way we deal with it has become so much more intense.
Yeah,
And Mintzberg really gets that.
absolutely. And a lot of managers are kind of just thrown in without any real training.
Oh,
No
yeah.
wonder it feels so crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
But the book also challenges some common ideas about management.
Right.
Well, one of the biggest myths is that leadership and management are separate things.
Right. People say that all the time.
But really, they're two sides of the same coin.
I see what you mean.
You can't be a good manager without leadership skills, and vice versa.
Like trying to bake a cake without flour.
Exactly. You need both.
Right.
And Mintzberg also says that managing isn't some science you can just learn from a textbook.
Right.
It's more like an art.
Uh-huh.
Formal training can help, but it's not everything.
Makes sense.
You'll find amazing managers who have never taken a business class in their life.
Interesting.
It's more about adapting to different situations and using your experience, your gut feeling, and good judgment.
Yeah, I could see that.
And that leads us to another myth, that management is always changing because of all the disruption.
Ah.
Mintzberg actually has some funny, dry humor about this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he points out that we're still buttoning our shirts the same way and driving cars with engines pretty much like they've always been.
Haha, so true.
We get so focused on what's changing, we forget what stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
Managing is more about using those core principles in new ways.
I like that.
Now I know what you might be thinking. Okay, so management isn't some brand new science, but what does it actually look like in practice?
Right.
And this is where it gets surprising.
Almost.
It's not exactly the calm, peaceful picture you might have in mind.
I see.
Think more like fast-paced, relentless, even chaotic at times.
Oh.
Mintzberg found some amazing details about how fast managers have to work.
Okay.
Foremen were averaging one activity every 48 seconds. And CEOs hardly ever had a break longer than 9 minutes.
Oh.
It's like they're constantly in emergency mode, juggling demands and changing priorities.
I can imagine.
And we haven't even talked about interruptions yet.
Oh, yeah, interruption.
But here's the thing. Mintzberg doesn't see interruptions as distractions from the real work.
Really?
He actually thinks they are the work. Managers aren't like writers who need long, quiet periods to focus.
Interesting.
Their flow state is the interruption, being able to respond instantly to whatever comes up. So it's less about deep thinking and more about mastering action and reaction.
I get it.
And speaking of action, Mintzberg found that managers are drawn to concrete tasks and solving problems.
Makes sense.
Given the fire to put out, and they're in their element. Abstract discussions and long-term planning sessions, not so much.
Uh-huh.
They thrive on doing things and seeing immediate results.
I can see that.
Now get this, you know what else managers love?
What?
Gossip.
Wait, really?
I know it sounds strange,
It does.
but it makes sense when you think about it.
Okay, how so?
Managers rely a lot on what Mintzberg calls soft communication.
Soft communication.
Things like gossip, hearsay, those quick chats in the hallway.
I see.
It's all about getting information quickly. You can't always wait for a formal report when you need to make a decision fast.
Right.
Sometimes a little juicy gossip is exactly what you need to stay ahead of the curve.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
And this also challenges the old idea of management as a top-down hierarchy. It's not just about orders coming from the boss.
Right.
Lateral relationships and informal networks are crucial for effective management.
I agree.
A good example of this is Brian Adams, a program manager at Bombardier.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
He had tons of responsibility, but not much formal authority.
So how did he get things done?
By mastering lateral management.
What does that mean?
It was all about negotiation, persuasion, and building trust with his colleagues.
I see.
His influence came not from his position, but from his ability to build strong relationships.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, let's talk about technology.
Okay.
How has email changed the world of management? Has it been a revolution?
Well, it's a double-edged sword.
How so?
On the one hand, it sped things up and made constant communication even more important.
Right.
We're always connected, always on,
Yeah.
and the amount of information we process is crazy.
It is.
But on the other hand, Email can create this illusion of control.
Illusion?
Just because you're sending and receiving emails all the time doesn't mean you're actually in control.
Right.
In fact, it can lead to superficiality.
Meaning?
You get so caught up in the back and forth that you lose sight of the big picture.
Ah.
You can be a manager drowning in emails, feeling on top of things, but totally out of touch with what's happening on the ground.
I see what you mean.
That's the danger of relying too much on technology without having the skills to manage it well.
So email hasn't really changed the nature of management.
No.
It just amplified the good and the bad.
Yeah.
It's a powerful tool. But like any tool, you have to use it wisely.
Absolutely.
What's really cool is that Mintzberg doesn't just give this gloomy picture of management chaos.
He doesn't.
No. He offers a way to understand the different roles managers play.
Okay.
He breaks it down into what he calls 3 planes of action.
3 planes.
That's a perfect segue into part 2 of our deep dive.
That's good.
We'll unpack those 3 planes and see how they all work together to create a model of managing.
Okay, I'm interested to hear more.
Stay tuned.
I will.
Welcome back. So last time we were talking about Mintzberg's pretty intense description of what it's like to actually be a manager.
Yeah, lots of speed and intensity.
Right. But like you said, he doesn't just paint this picture of chaos.
No, not at all.
He actually gives us a model for understanding it, right?
Yeah, he breaks it down to these 3 planes of action.
Okay, so let's unpack these planes. What are they exactly? And how do they help us understand what managers actually DO all day?
Well, the first plane is all about information.
Information, okay.
The manager is like the nerve center of their team, always gathering and sharing information.
So they're controlling what comes in and goes out.
Exactly. And this role is so important because information is power.
Right.
To be effective, managers have to be masters of information flow.
Makes sense.
Constantly monitoring what's happening inside and outside their unit.
That sounds like a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
How do they even know what's important with so much coming at them?
That's where the disseminator role comes in.
Okay.
The good manager knows how to filter out the noise and find the signal. They take that crucial information and share it with the people who need it.
So their team, their boss, maybe people outside the company.
Exactly. They're like a human newsfeed constantly updating everyone.
I like that analogy.
And it's not just passing along data, you know?
Right.
They need to synthesize it, put it in context, make it meaningful.
So like, if you're a manager presenting to your team,
Yeah.
you wouldn't just throw a bunch of numbers at them.
No.
You'd explain what those numbers mean,
Right.
how they connect to the team's goals,
Yeah.
why they should care.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's monitoring and disseminating. What about spokesperson? What does that involve?
That's where the manager steps outside their team and represents them to the wider world.
Okay.
They talk to customers, suppliers, the media, anyone outside the immediate team.
So they're like the PR person for their unit,
That's a good way to put it.
making sure their team's accomplishments are known
Yeah,
and that their needs are understood by the rest of the organization.
exactly. They need to be able to explain their team's goals, their achievements, their challenges clearly and convincingly.
Be the voice of the team. Advocate for their interests and make sure they get the support they need.
Right.
Okay, so we've got monitoring, disseminating, and speaking.
Uh-huh.
Now, what about controlling? That sounds, well, a little bit more authoritative.
Uh-huh. It does.
What does that look like?
This is where things get interesting. The manager uses information to guide and direct their team's behavior.
Okay.
Think setting targets, creating procedures, allocating resources.
So is this where we see that traditional command and control part of management?
In a way, yes.
Oh.
But it's not about being a dictator.
Right.
It's about using information strategically to make sure the team is working well and achieving its goals.
So if you're a manager overseeing a project with a tight deadline, you need to make sure everyone is on track.
Yes.
Resources are being used, right?
Yeah.
And deal with any problems before they get out of hand.
Exactly. That's where control comes in.
Steering the ship in the right direction.
That's a good way to put it.
Now, Mintzberg also talks about decision-making as a form of control, doesn't he?
He does.
How does that work?
He sees decision-making as a core part of this information plane.
Okay.
He breaks it down into different categories like designing systems, delegating tasks, allocating resources, and something he calls deeming.
Deeming. That's a new one.
Think of it as setting targets or expectations.
I see.
Like you might say to your team, we need to increase sales by 10% this quarter.
Okay.
Or let's aim to reduce customer support wait times by 15%.
So you're deeming what needs to be achieved.
Exactly. And while some deeming is necessary, Mintzberg warns against relying on it too much.
Why is that?
Remember that focus on tangible action we talked about?
Uh-huh.
Well, too much deeming can lead to a focus on superficial metrics
Well,
instead of a deeper understanding of the work itself.
it becomes all about hitting those numbers,
Right.
even if they don't really mean anything
Yeah.
or reflect how well the team is actually doing.
It creates a disconnect between the managers setting the targets and the people who are actually doing the work.
Right, because if you're just focused on hitting a number, you might miss opportunities to make the process better or fix underlying problems that are slowing the team down.
You got it. It's crucial to balance setting expectations with creating an environment where people feel like they can think critically, solve problems, and contribute beyond just hitting some target.
I like that. Okay, so we've covered the information plane pretty well.
Yes.
It's clear that managers need to be good at gathering, processing, and communicating information to be effective.
Absolutely.
So what about the second plane?
The second plane shifts our focus from information to people.
Okay.
This is where managers move from managing through information to managing with people.
Okay.
It's all about relationships, collaboration, and getting people inspired to take action.
So is this where leadership really comes in?
Absolutely. Minzberg sees leadership as a key part of this people plane. He highlights three main aspects of leading: energizing, developing, and building culture.
Okay, let's break those down. What does it mean to energize people? Sounds like giving everyone a shot of espresso.
Well, it's more about creating an environment where people feel motivated, supported, and empowered to do their best.
Okay.
It's about bringing out their passion and enthusiasm, helping them see how their work matters in the bigger picture.
So less about giving orders and more about creating a shared sense of purpose, making people feel like they're part of something bigger.
You got it. Mintzberg talks about liberating and enabling people
I like that.
instead of just supervising or controlling them.
It's about letting people own their work,
Yeah.
encouraging them to take initiative.
Think about a time when you were really energized by your work. What made you feel that way?
Yeah.
Chances are you felt valued, respected, and empowered to make a difference.
Right.
That's the kind of environment great managers create.
Absolutely. What about developing people? What does that look like in practice?
Developing is about investing in your team's growth,
Okay.
giving them the tools and opportunities they need to reach their full potential.
So coaching, mentoring, training, maybe giving them challenging assignments.
Exactly. It's about helping them learn, grow, and move forward in their careers.
I'm doing it in a way that feels supportive and encouraging.
Right. Not overwhelming or intimidating.
Have you ever had a manager who really mentored you?
Oh, yeah.
Someone who saw your potential and helped you learn new skills?
Absolutely. That kind of support can be so valuable.
It builds confidence and helps you move forward.
Exactly. That's what good managers do.
They invest in their people and help them grow.
Yes, both professionally and personally.
Okay, so energizing is about motivation, developing is about growth, and the third aspect is building culture. This one feels a little more abstract. What does it even mean to build a culture?
It's about shaping the values, norms, and beliefs that guide how people act within the team.
Okay.
You're creating a shared sense of identity and purpose, a set of unwritten rules that everyone understands.
It's the vibe of the team.
Yeah, the way things get done.
And values that are important.
Exactly. So you can't just dictate culture from the top down.
Right.
It's more about setting an example, reinforcing good behaviors, creating a work environment that reflects those values you want to cultivate.
A strong culture can be a huge asset.
Definitely.
It attracts and keeps top talent,
Uh-huh.
boosts morale,
Yeah.
and drives performance. Think about companies with great cultures like Google or Zappos. They're famous for their work environments
Right.
that put employee well-being first,
Yeah.
that prioritize innovation and collaboration.
It doesn't happen by accident.
It takes effort.
And consistent reinforcement from leaders at all levels.
Okay, so we've covered energizing, developing, and building culture. They're all connected, aren't they?
They are. You can't really energize people if they don't feel like they're growing.
Right.
And you can't build a strong culture without a shared sense of purpose and passion.
You need all three.
Good managers understand this, and they work hard to create an environment that supports all three aspects of leadership.
So energized people are motivated to learn and grow,
Yes.
which creates a positive culture,
Uh-huh.
which then further boosts their engagement and how well they perform.
It's a virtuous cycle.
Okay, so we've looked at the information plane and the people plane.
Yes.
What's the third plane all about?
The third plane is action.
Action, okay?
This is where managers get their hands dirty,
Uh-huh.
making things happen and dealing with any problems that come up.
So this is where we see that doer mentality Mintzberg talks about.
Exactly.
Not just delegating and overseeing,
Right.
but actually jumping in and getting things done.
He emphasizes two key parts of this action plane: managing projects and handling disturbances.
Okay, let's start with managing projects. It sounds pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but I imagine it's more complex than it seems.
You're right. It's more than just checking boxes on a list.
I see.
It's about taking a group of tasks, coordinating them effectively,
Right.
and making sure they're all moving towards the same goal.
Whether it's launching a new product or organizing a team event.
Exactly.
So you need to be organized, set deadlines, and keep everyone on track.
For sure.
But you also need to be flexible because things rarely go according to plan.
That's so true.
Think about a time when you were working on a project and hit a snag. Did the manager freak out and micromanage?
Yeah.
Or did they stay calm, adjust the plan, and keep the team focused?
That ability to adapt is so important for managers.
Especially when things go wrong.
Absolutely. And that leads us to the second part of the action plane, handling disturbances.
What does Mintzberg mean by disturbances?
Disturbances are those unexpected events that throw a wrench in the gears.
Okay.
Like crises, conflicts, technical problems,
Right.
or even just a sudden change in priorities from higher ups.
Those hiccups that happen in any busy work environment.
You got it.
So the manager has to be a firefighter, putting out those fires and keeping things running.
That's a great way to put it.
They have to assess the situation quickly,
Yes.
make fast decisions, and get things back on track.
They need to be a problem solver, a
Yes.
mediator,
Yeah.
and a calming presence in the middle of the chaos.
So we have these three planes: information, people, and action.
Right.
They're all different, but also interconnected.
They are.
You can't be a master of information if you can't communicate it to your team.
That's true.
And you can't inspire action if you don't understand the people you're leading.
Exactly. Mintzberg says these planes are all interdependent.
You can't just focus on one.
You need to be able to move between them easily.
Right, adapting your approach to each situation.
It's not about being an information guru or a people person or a doer.
You have to be all three at once.
Exactly.
No wonder management can feel so hard,
It's definitely challenging.
but also interesting and rewarding.
It is.
But navigating these three planes isn't always easy.
Yep.
Mintzberg talks about some conundrums that managers face. He calls them tightropes they have to walk.
Tight ropes. I like that.
I think we'll need to save those for part 3 of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into Henry Mintzberg's Simply Managing. Last time we left off with these tightropes that managers have to walk.
Yeah, those conundrums that come with the territory.
Right, so let's walk those tightropes together
Okay.
and see what challenges are waiting for us.
Sounds good.
What's the first one we'll tackle?
The first tightrope is the predicament of planning.
Okay.
It's about that tension between planning and actually having a good strategy.
It seems counterintuitive. Isn't a good plan essential? How can planning be a bad D thing?
It's a paradox.
Yeah.
Planning is all about analyzing, breaking things down, predicting the future.
Right. You gather data, make projections, create a detailed plan of action.
Exactly. But the future is unpredictable. No matter how much you analyze, unexpected things will happen.
So you're saying sticking too rigidly to a plan can actually make you less adaptable?
Exactly. Minzberg says strategy is more about putting those pieces back together in a way that makes sense as things change.
Okay.
It's about being able to adapt, to respond to the unexpected, to adjust your course as you go.
So it's not about throwing out planning altogether.
No.
It's about finding that balance between analysis and action,
Right.
between having a plan and being flexible enough to deviate from it when you need to.
Think of it like navigating a ship.
Okay.
You need a map to guide you, but you also need to adjust based on the winds, the currents, any obstacles you encounter.
So that's the essence of strategy.
Yeah, being able to adjust to the unexpected.
Now, Minzberg also says that strategies often emerge from the bottom up.
Right, not always from the top down.
So it's not always the CEO with the grand vision.
Not necessarily. Sometimes the best strategies come from the people doing the work.
The ones on the front lines, dealing with customers, solving problems.
Yeah, they're the ones who often have the most innovative ideas.
That's a good reminder for managers to be open to ideas from everyone.
Definitely, not just the people at the top.
Good ideas can come from anywhere.
Absolutely.
So to walk this predicament of planning tightrope,
Yes.
you need to be a good planner, but also a flexible strategist,
Right.
able to balance analysis with action
Yeah.
and be open to ideas from unexpected sources.
It's a challenge.
It is. What's the next tightrope?
The next one is the syndrome of superficiality.
Okay.
It's that feeling of being bombarded with so much information and details that you lose sight of the bigger picture.
I think everyone can relate to that.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day whirlwind.
Putting out fires and forgetting what you're even fighting for are.
Exactly. A lot of managers fall into this trap.
I can see how.
They get caught up in meetings, emails, urgent tasks, and they lose sight of the bigger goals and priorities.
They become reactive instead of proactive.
Minzberg has this great analogy.
Oh,
He compares it to a painter trying to see the whole canvas while standing too close.
I see. If you're too close, all you see are the individual brushstrokes.
Yeah, you can't appreciate the whole composition.
The message of the artwork.
To really see the painting, you need to step back.
Gain some distance.
Exactly.
So how do managers avoid this trap? How can they get that perspective when they're being pulled in so many directions?
It's tough, but it's crucial.
Okay.
One key is to make time for reflection.
Just to think.
Yes, schedule time in your calendar
Go ahead.
to step back from the busyness and consciously think about the bigger picture.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what are our goals? Are we making progress? Are we focusing on the right things?
It sounds simple, but hard to actually do.
It is. You have to be intentional about it.
What else can help?
Delegating effectively can free up your time and mental energy.
So you have more space to think strategically.
Exactly. And another thing is to seek out learning opportunities outside of your immediate work.
Like what?
Go to conferences, read books, connect with other managers,
Okay.
get exposed to new ideas.
So to fight the syndrome of superficiality, you need to reflect, prioritize strategic thinking, and make time to see the big picture.
Right. It's about stepping back.
Okay, on to the next tightrope. What is it?
The quandary of connecting.
Right.
This one is about the challenge of staying connected to the actual work when management itself can make you detached.
The classic ivory tower problem.
Exactly. Managers can get so caught up in meetings, reports, budgets,
Right.
that they lose touch with what it's like to be on the front lines.
Dealing with customers, making the product, providing the service.
Exactly. And this disconnect can cause all sorts of problems.
Like making decisions that sound good in theory but don't work in practice.
Yeah, or failing to understand the challenges your team is facing.
Right, so why does this happen?
Well, Mintzberg points out a few reasons.
Okay.
One is the hierarchical structure of organizations.
The higher you climb, the further you are from the day-to-day work.
Exactly. Those layers of management create a buffer.
Filtering information, distorting perspectives.
Right. And another reason is the nature of management work itself.
How so?
A lot of it is abstract budgets, plans, strategies, data analysis.
Okay.
These are important,
Uh-huh.
but they can feel very removed from the actual work being done.
So how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah.
How do you stay connected to the real work when so much of your job is abstract?
Mintzberg is a big fan of management by wandering around.
What's that?
It's about getting out of your office, talking to people at all levels,
Okay.
observing what's happening, getting a feel for the work being done.
So it's not just walking around.
No,
It's about engaging, listening, being present.
exactly. And it's about building relationships, not just collecting information.
When you're connected to the people, you're connected to the work.
Right.
So to overcome this quandary of connecting, you have to stay grounded in the reality of the work. Get out of your office, talk to your team.
Yes.
Make sure you don't lose sight of what's happening on the front lines.
Very important.
Okay, next tightrope.
The dilemma of delegating. It's that tension between needing to delegate tasks to empower your team and knowing more about those tasks than the people you're delegating to.
It's about finding the right balance.
You want to give your team ownership and autonomy,
Right.
but you also want to make sure things are done well.
If you delegate too much, things might fall apart.
And if you don't delegate
You
enough,
micromanage and burn yourself out.
exactly, it's a tough spot.
I bet it's especially hard for managers who are promoted from within.
Yeah.
They know the work really well,
Mhm.
and it's tempting to just do it themselves instead of training someone else.
It's a common struggle.
But delegating well is essential for both the manager and the team.
Absolutely. It's a key part of developing your team.
Right, giving them opportunities to learn and grow.
So how do you delegate effectively when you have that knowledge gap?
Yeah, when you know you could probably do it better yourself.
It starts with communication.
Okay.
Explain the task clearly, set clear expectations, provide the resources and support they need. Right.
But it's also about trust.
Trust.
Trust your team to figure things out, to make decisions, to learn from their mistakes.
So letting go of some control,
Yes.
giving them the space to grow and develop.
Which can be scary, but ultimately makes the team stronger.
Think about a time a manager trusted you with something challenging.
Hmm.
Even if you made mistakes, you probably learned a lot.
Uh-huh.
And it felt good when you succeeded.
That's the power of delegation.
To handle this dilemma of delegating, you have to find that balance between giving guidance
Yeah.
and giving your team freedom to learn and make decisions.
Okay, ready for the final tightrope.
Hit me with it.
The mysteries of measuring.
Interesting.
This one explores the limitations of relying too much on hard data to make decisions.
We live in a world obsessed with data.
It's all metrics and KPIs.
Dashboards, visualizations.
But there's a side to data we need to be careful of.
Okay, you're saying there's a downside.
Not necessarily bad, but something to be aware of.
Minzberg says we shouldn't just take those numbers at face value.
Okay.
Hard data can be limited, overly simplified, even unreliable.
Especially in management, which is so much about people, relationships, subjective judgments.
Exactly. You can't quantify everything.
And focusing too much on numbers can actually distract you from what's really going on.
It can create a false sense of certainty
Right.
and lead to decisions that look good on paper but ignore the complexities of the real world.
So it's not about ignoring data.
No.
It's about using it wisely.
In combination with other information.
Like feedback from your team.
Yes.
Observations from management by wandering around.
Exactly.
And your own intuition and experience.
It's about seeing the whole picture.
So to navigate the mysteries of measuring, you have to be smart about the data you use,
Right?
understand its limits, and balance it with other forms of knowledge.
Data is a tool, but it's not the only tool.
We've now walked through 5 tightropes.
The predicament of planning, the syndrome of superficiality,
The quandary of connecting, the dilemma of delegating.
and the mysteries of measuring.
That's a lot to balance.
It is. But remember, Mintzberg doesn't just leave us teetering.
He doesn't.
No, he gives us a framework for thinking about effective management that can help us find our footing.
What is it?
He identifies 5 threads that run through good management.
Okay, let's unravel these threads.
They are energy, reflectiveness, collaboration, worldliness, and proactiveness.
Okay, what does it mean to be an energetic manager?
They're passionate, engaged, they bring a sense of urgency and purpose to their work,
They're not afraid to get their hands dirty.
and they inspire their team to do the same.
They're the ones who light up the room and make people excited to come to work.
Exactly.
It takes a lot of energy to manage all those planes and tightrope.
It does. What about reflectiveness?
We talked about that with the syndrome of superficiality.
Right. Reflective managers take the time to step back, think deeply, learn from their mistakes.
They're always trying to improve.
They're not just going through the motions, they're actively learning and growing.
It's about being mindful, not just reacting.
Exactly.
What about collaboration? We saw that in Mintzberg's critique of the hierarchy.
Yeah, collaborative managers are team players.
They build strong relationships.
They create an open environment where everyone feels valued.
They know that working together, using everyone's different skills, is how you get the best results.
It's about shared ownership, empowering everyone to contribute.
Okay, so we've got energy, reflectiveness, collaboration.
Uh-huh.
What are the last 2?
Worldliness and proactiveness.
Okay, worldliness.
Worldly managers are curious and open-minded. They understand the bigger context of their work.
They don't just focus on their own little area.
They stay informed about industry trends, global events, new technologies.
So they're thinking about how those things might affect their work.
Exactly. And the last one, proactiveness.
Okay.
Proactive managers don't just react to things, they anticipate them.
They plan ahead and take initiative.
They're not afraid to challenge the status quo.
To experiment and push the boundaries.
They're leaders who inspire, innovate, and drive progress.
So those are Mintzberg's 5 threads of effective management. Energy, reflectiveness, collaboration, worldliness, and proactiveness.
It's a different way of thinking about what it means to be a good manager.
It's not about command and control.
It's about engaging, connecting, empowering, and inspiring.
Being present, being mindful, and being proactive.
Exactly.
As you think about your own experiences as a manager or working for a manager, how do these threads show up in your work?
Are you seeing those tightropes? Are you embodying those threads? It's all about learning and growing.
And if you want to go deeper, I definitely recommend reading Simply Managing Yourself.
It's a book that will make you think differently about management.
It'll give you a framework for becoming a more effective and fulfilling manager.
It's a great read.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep managing.